I know I'm going to roll off a ton of ifs here, so I get it. Anytime you say, well, if that happens and that happens and that happens, and it gets to be a little ridiculous, but still, if you get the 21st rated, if these rankings are generally accurate, if you get the 21st ranked defensive line in the country, that's not exceptional, that's not great, but that's pretty good. That's decent. There are 135 teams playing football. Now in the SEC, understand that there's going to be a larger proportion of better defensive lines in your league than if you moved to the ACC, for example. But still, number 21, if you have the second best linebackers and the second best secondary, then you can get away with the 21st. Again, that's a decent defensive line. So then the running back room is strong and the wide receiver play should be one of the strengths on the team, that if Jackson Arnold and the offensive line are capable, and the offensive line, again, is not inexperienced, it's just inexperienced at Oklahoma, and with one of the top offensive line coaches in the country, that sounds like it's the makings of a surprise team.
Yeah, I think, Mark, you have to, and you've been doing this a long time. I've been through this for quite some time as well. I think what you hear early on in fall camp, I think goes with a little bit of a grain of salt, right? But I think they from an offensive line perspective, and this is some of the things that I've heard early on in fall camp, they feel really good about their guys. They feel really good about who they have. There's not It's a far cry from where they were in spring. I'll say that. There was some comments that I heard. They're like, "Wow, this is where we're at." And part of that was with some injuries, and there's Branson Hickman, the transfer from SMU, wasn't in at that point, and so it was a little bit of a struggle in spring. But and again, some of this is probably coach speak that you hear, but this was the best summer that they've had in a long time as a group. This is the best summer that they've had just buying into everything that Schmidt's doing from a strength and conditioning perspective. And so I think they feel good about their guys. I think, what remains to be seen is how they play together, as we've mentioned with these guys moving, being from, a lot of these guys will be transfers. 5 of their probably top 6 guys will be transfers coming in. So the thing that it's not completely uncommon to think about, but the thing that I continue to hear from various different people is this team is likely to go as far as Jackson Arnold takes them. So if he is, and I think you take a lot from how he played against, when you move this forward to this 2024 season, you take a lot from how he performed against Arizona in in the bowl game. If you see that Jackson Arnold, like, this very much could be a 6-6, 7-5 team, even a 5-7 team, just in terms of the turnovers. But all indications was he took that performance really, really hard, and that has kind of fueled him in terms of his progression over the summer and the fall so far. And I think maybe it's one of those things, Mark, you don't like to see someone struggle in his first start, but maybe it was a little bit of a blessing in disguise, looking at, him struggling early on in that game, being a little bit inconsistent. If he would have had, if he would have went 30 for 38 with 380 yards and 4 touchdowns and no interceptions, maybe he doesn't have that drive that, kind of pulls him through the off season. So I think the difference in this team being probably, if everything aligns as you have described right here, on the defensive side, you've got a top 5 linebacker group, you've got a top 5 safety group, you've got a top 20, just say top 20 defensive line in the country, and everything else is really solidified from a running back perspective. Someone steps up there. I mean, I think it could be the difference between, like I said, 6-6, 7-5, or potentially a 9-3 team. Now, it's it's kind of one of those like things where, Mark, I would have to see it to believe it. Like for a team stepping in year one, and being 10-2 in this league. Now, I mean, if the stars align, I think that's possible, right? Sure, like, but I think, and I hate. We've talked about this before. I hate floors and I hate ceilings when you talk about that, because particularly floors, because what one floor could be, um, with multiple injuries, that floor could drop a little bit, right? But I think, um, if this team gets if they get the type of quarterback play that they're looking for, even if it's somewhat comparable to what they got last year with Dylan Gabriel, or even the year before, I think this is a team that is improved. The roster and talent has improved at all other positions, where they do have the ability and have the possibility to go 9-3. And again, um, I mean, we would see how that shakes out. But if you go 9-3, you think that's probably got to be good enough for probably fourth, fifth in the SEC, and probably, has a really good chance to get you in the playoffs. So, um, I completely agree with you, Mark. I think this is a team, if those things align and they get really solid quarterback play from Jackson Arnold, that they can certainly, be a surprise team, to your point, because I think nationally. And I don't know and I haven't looked at the magazine from Phil Steele yet, if where he's got Oklahoma just in the order of finish, in the season, from a prediction perspective. But yeah, that if those things align, they could be certainly in the top 3 or 4.
So he did not rank, or I'm sorry, he did not make record predictions.
Okay.
Neither did Athlon. They've given up on that. They're not record predictions. However, there are rankings. So he has his power rankings, which are simply these are the best teams in the country, number one, number two, all the way down, all the way to the bottom. So that is simply how good he thinks the teams are. Now, then he has his predictions, which is a national rankings prediction, which takes the schedule into account. And
Right.
this is how difficult he thinks Oklahoma's schedule is. He believes that Oklahoma has the 7th best team in the country. Now, when he puts that together with the schedule, he ranks them 20th.
Yep. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, and it's, and, I think we talked about this last week. Maybe not necessarily just the schedule, but the fact that it's the first year with this type of schedule maybe makes that a little bit, maybe makes that look a little bit different.